All right, we're going to talk about midpoint relationships, a little bit more advanced. And I've drawn a couple coordinate planes, segments. And if you hadn't recognized, a coordinate plane is just like a unitless two-way ruler, or like a two-dimensional ruler where it measures the width and the height of something, or the length and the width, or whatever your perspective is. Doesn't really matter. But it's a location on a plane, right? So let's say I have a point A, it's like right here, and I have point B, it's like right here. That's point A, and that's point B, and you might be thinking to yourself, why isn't he just labeling these? Well, I want to figure out what this point here is. It's going to be -2 and 4. And this point is over in positive 3x, and of course it's going to be 4. The y will be the same. And if I connect these two together at A and B and end them there at A and B, it gives me line segment AB. Now you can do this and draw something like this if you're just given the coordinate points of A and B, and it's like, okay, well, what's the midpoint? We'll call that point M, right? So first, how long is AB? Well, this line segment AB, the measure of AB equals, well, -2 to 3 is 5. So -1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3 more. So negative, it's going to be 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2 plus 3 is 5, right? So it's 5 units. Okay, now it could be feet or whatever. It's 5 units to the first. We're just going to say 5. Okay, so AB is 5. So what is the coordinate point for the midpoint? Well, now remember that the midpoint is going to be halfway in between A and B, right? So whatever 5 divided by 2 is. So M is going to be located, is going to be at 5 divided by 2, which is 2.5, right? From A or B, right? If it's going to be on in this side of A. All right, so it's going to be 2.5 on this side of A and 2.5 on this side of B. So, all right, so the midpoint's 2.5 away from A and B, and it's got to be in between A and B because it's the midpoint, right? So it's going to be like 2.5 there, right? So if I take -2 and I add 2.5, I'm going to get 0.5. 0.5. And then the y is going to be the same. So that's the midpoint at 0.5 and 4. And it's pretty simple. If I do the same thing with a y, it's just up and down. Let's say I have a coordinate point here, and it goes to like there. Let's make it go one more. Let's have an even number this time. Okay, so there's my point A and B this time on this coordinate plane. And let's see, line segment, the measure of AB in this case is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be 8, right? It's 8. It doesn't matter if it's not -8. A measurement isn't negative. A measurement is just a measurement. Okay, so whether I measure from A to B or B to A, it's 8. Now the midpoint is going to be halfway in between these two. Well, it's what's this coordinate point? This coordinate point lies at x is 3. Whoops, x is 3. And B is also at the x value of 3. But the y values are different because it's an up and down line. And it ends at 3 and -5. 3 and -5. And you might notice that the difference between 3 and -5 is 8. Well, that's not a coincidence, right? These are in units. All right, so what is the coordinate point of the midpoint, right? Well, the midpoint is going to be located, 8 divided by 2, right, is 4. So it's going to be 4 from A, and it's going to be 4 from B, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That is going to be my midpoint, right? So if I do 4 or 3 minus 4 is going to be -1. And if I do -5 plus 4, it's still -1. And then the x value still is 3. Right, so that's the coordinate point. So that's same thing as this way, but up and down instead of left and right. Okay, so that's pretty intuitive. Now, but what happens if I have a horizontal line? Because this horizontal, or not a horizontal line, and not a vertical line. I have, you know, some random line like this. This is A, and this is B. Well, there's a little bit more work because you have to figure out the halfway point in both the up and down direction and the left and right direction, right? Because he's going to have different x and different y coordinates. Sorry about that. A is located at -1, 2, 3, 4, and -1, 2, 3 on my coordinate plane, and B is located at +3 in the x and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, +5 in the y. So what is the midpoint of this line? What is going to be the coordinate point of this one? Well, we need to take into consideration the midpoint in the x direction and the midpoint of the y direction. And the midpoint of, if I look at the midpoint of the x and the midpoint of the y, it'll be somewhere in here. All right, so let's evaluate our x's. All right, so if I look from x's, it goes 4 this way and 3 this way, and also 4 minus -3 is going to be 7. So my change in x here is 7, right? And 7 divided by 2 equals 3.5. Okay, so I'm going to take that 3.5, right? And it's going to be 3.5 between -4 and +3. So that's going to be -4 plus 3.5 is -0.5, and 3 minus 3.5 is -0.5. So the x value of my midpoint is going to be -0.5. Okay, that's my x. Right? Now my y is the same concept, but it's up and down instead of left and right. Now if I look at that, it goes from 5 to -3. So 5, the change in y equals 5 minus, it goes 3 up, 5 up, so that's 8. The change in y was 8, or the difference in y, the length of y is 8. Right? And if I divide that by 2, it's going to be equal to 4. Okay, so if I go 4 up from -3, I'm going to be at 1. If I go 4 down from 5, I'm going to be at 1. So right there is my y value at 1. So this point right here, right, my midpoint is going to be at an x of -0.5 and a y of 1. And that is my midpoint. Midpoint M. Midpoint M. Midpoint M. Okay, and it works. So it's just going to be the midpoint of the x direction and the midpoint of the y direction. So let's do something like this. I have point A that is at -4, 3, and I have point B, which is at, we'll say, 5, -1. What's the midpoint? Okay, well, first thing I should do is draw it. Okay, I have a coordinate plane here. It's going to be at -4, A, it's going to be at -4, and then 3 up. So this is my point A. -4, and 3. And then point B is at 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then -1. That's my point B at 5, comma, -1. Right, and then I can draw a little line between this, and I have to evaluate the change in x and the change in y and divide it by 2, and then put it right in between by whatever factor that is. Right, so my change, I did x last time as orange, so I'll do it again this time as orange. So my change in x goes from -4 to 5. So this is 9 long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, 8 long. Is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1. Oops, that's -3. I plotted that wrong. Plotted that wrong. Let me do that again. Fix my error. So -4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3. There we go. That's better. Everybody makes mistakes. Okay, and that's why we check ourselves. All right, so if I go between -4 and 5, it should be 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So my change in x is 9. And to divide that by 2, I get 4.5. So my new x value is going to be 4.5 between A and B. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and a half. So it's right here. 1, 2, 3, 4 and a half. It's right there at x equals 0.5 for my midpoint. What about the y? What about the y? Well, the y goes from here to there, and it looks like it's 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. I did it wrong again. Here we go. That's why we check our work. Here we go. That looks better. There we go. That's better. All right. So now, the difference between -1 and 3 is 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So that is 4. Change in y equals, again, 4. Divide that by 2. It's going to be equal to 2. Right. So it's going to be right here, and then this is going to go and meet up with a half. Right. So if I go 2, I'm looking at my y values, right? If I go 2 down from 3, I get to 2. If I go 2 up from -1, I get to 1. So this is going to be 1 here. I think I misspoke. It's 1, not there, right? So if I go 2 minus 3 minus 2 is 1. And then -1 plus 2 is 1. So my midpoint is going to be right here at 0.5, comma 1. All right. So sorry about the couple mistakes. That's why it's important to double check your work with both your math and your drawing, because either one of those can be wrong. You're just looking at the distances between those two values for your x and your y. So that's how you find the midpoint on a coordinate plane. We'll talk about how you find distances, this distance, a little bit later with Pythagorean's theorem. It's very, very helpful. Okay, moving on to the next topic.